Welcome to this week's Droppin' Dimes podcast here on Collider. My name is Matt Knost. I am your host. As you know, I'm here every week, and I am joined by a fellow basketball fan. Co-host? Is that?
Yes, co-host.
Co-host. Please go ahead and plug
the
away.
Sports Gambling Podcast.
Mr. Sean Green, how are you, sir?
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
No, happy. We tried to make it happen last year, but then you went to Italy.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, not bad. How was it?
Oh, it was awesome. It was amazing. Went there for, my honeymoon. And it was definitely a unique experience because when we booked the honeymoon, I was more looking at like, when's the best deal hotel-wise, and kind of hit this perfect time where before it got super crowded in Italy, in Cinque Terre, where we stayed, which is so beautiful, right on the coast. Food's amazing. The whole thing's amazing. But I didn't look ahead to the sports calendar, and it was when the NBA Finals were going on. Yeah. So I'd be up at like 4 a.m. watching on my phone, still trying to put bets in, while also being on my honeymoon. So that was a funny part, trying to keep up with the league while still being on my honeymoon.
I'm doing that this year, the first week and a half of the playoffs. I'll miss 2 shows on this, which they're finding out about right now because I'm just going to be out of town. And it's like, nothing I can do about this, guys. Yeah. It sucks. It's just by happenstance, this landed. Trust me, I wanted this to happen 2 weeks, 3 weeks before, so it's not right at the beginning of the play. Thankfully, it's the first round.
Yeah, first round. A lot. Although this year, maybe there's some more intrigue as far as the matchups. We'll see. I mean, even the 1-8, which it seems in the West, it seems like it's going to be Lakers Pelicans, or it could be.
Who knows?
It could be Lakers Pelicans. I guess that's what I'm rooting for because, or maybe it's even Lakers Memphis would be fun to see Ja go up against LeBron. Like at least the 8 seeds are more interesting, I think, than years past because of some of these young guys. Yeah,
it could be. Right now, there's Memphis has a decent size. I think it's a 3-game lead as of right now.
Yeah.
But you got the Pelicans, you got the Trailblazers, and you got the Spurs all nipping at the heels, and Sacramento.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be crazy if Sacramento gets in. But, yeah, I guess Pelicans, just because kind of looking at their schedule, it seems like they have a little softer schedule than maybe Memphis. And
the storylines are way better.
And the NBA, they're going to, if it's going to be close, maybe Zion gets a couple calls. He's so fun to watch.
AD, that's the team he left. All the former Lakers on the Pels.
The storylines.
Plus Zion, and Zion versus LeBron. The NBA wants the Pelicans to make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's must-see regular season games even now. So why would they not want that? Get a little intrigue going for the 1-8? We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully they can keep pushing. But a big reason that I reach out to you is because we don't have much of the sports gambling aspect on this show. And as someone who co-hosts the sports gambling podcast,
yep,
I like that. Is it just like the Ohio State University?
We do when I do the reads, I go the Sports Gambling Podcast, but I think it's actually just called in iTunes Sports Gambling Podcast. But you put that in there, you can't miss it.
I assume the future looks bright for sports gambling in general.
Oh yeah, I mean. Just every sort of aspect. So basically what happened was daily fantasy football paved the way, right? And then came daily fantasy. And that kind of snuck in and it got into a bunch of states, DraftKings in a ton of states. And that was basically the first kind of dip in the toe into, but what if DraftKings just was a sports book? And DraftKings now is a sports book. Same with FanDuel. So they kind of paved the way to legalize it for everyone. And what was it, like 2 years ago, they overturned basically there was a law on the books that said no other state can take sports bets except Nevada, and then there was like a couple random exceptions in Montana or like a weird part of Delaware. And then they overturned that law in the Supreme Court, and it opened it up. Now, what they did was each state still has to make their own laws and set up their own thing. So it's like a state by state. It's very similar to the legalization of marijuana where one state does it and then the other state's like, wait, you can just get free money? All
exactly.
Right, we'll do
we can tax that and get extra income in.
Exactly.
I know it comes up on the ballot this year for California in November. So we'll be making a decision.
Going to be out there knocking on doors, getting a grassroots effort going.
Well, there's 14 states. When I read this, trying to do research on it last night. So there's probably going to be, after this, November election cycle, there's going to be X number adding to that list.
Yeah.
So it could be, who knows if it's going to be all 50 or whatever the case is.
Well, and it does. And what's kind of annoying is that each state has a different regulation, different body. Like Oregon, you have to do it through the lottery. Like Jersey, it's side of the racetrack. Like everyone kind of has their own way of doing it. But yeah, and I mean, the tax revenue has been amazing, and the opposition is very limited as far as like who really is so against sports gambling. If you don't want to gamble on sports, you don't have to. I mean, I have to contractually and just my degenerate nature. But the people that are against it, their argument, I think, is it's tough to really rally people to go out to the polls and vote against it. You know, if you don't want sports gambling, how motivated are you going to be to actually stop it? Whereas the people who are motivated to make it legal, it's like, yeah, it's a great business opportunity. I mean, being in the content game, it's been awesome for us. So many more companies that are taking bets means so many more people want to advertise on our site, and yeah, there's all these ancillary things. It's like, oh, now I'm a stats company, you know, tied to gambling. Like there's every little aspect. And I think it's great. I mean, it's great for sports in general because it really drives viewership. You look at the XFL. The XFL is just like, hey, you guys like gambling? We're a football league.
Well, yeah, whatever they can do to find a hook to get people to pay attention, it'll work.
And even for like women's sports who maybe WNBA doesn't have amazing viewership, once legalization fully goes on board, it's in the summer, there's not as many sports going on. Guys who are like, oh, that's stupid, but then you put a $20 bet on it, it's like all of a sudden you're yelling for the Mercury Suns or whatever. Yeah,
you got stakes to actually, you know, be invested within the game in and of itself.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what fantasy did for NFL. It turned just a casual person into, now at least they know, you know, one individual from every team.
Gets them following the league.
Yeah, it gets to just actively following at least players.
Yeah.
But you start to pay attention to matchups and, you know, looking at the schedule coming up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it just draws more fan interest overall. Now, you mentioned like in certain states, you have to go to specific locations. Now, I've heard that as a possible solution, but I would assume everybody would be pushing for digital because it's just the ease of accessibility.
Yep.
Do you know what they're going to try?
I haven't looked at the California law yet. I would imagine, though, DraftKings, FanDuel, since they already have an app, I mean, it technically ends up being a different app, but people are already familiar with doing it. I think they're going to push for digital. Now, again, there's some states you have to go physically there. Some states you can do the digital. And I think from gambling on sports for, you know, almost decades now, sadly decades. I've been gambling for a long time. The people that I've seen get in trouble are actually are the people that do it illegally or the people that do it not online. Because what happens is if you bet locally with a bookie will give you $2,000, $5,000 credit without any sort of. It's not like he's running your finances, and that's when people get into trouble because they're betting on credit. Now, if you have an app like DraftKings, if you want to place a $100 bet, you have to give DraftKings
physically put in
$100. Now, you could rack up a credit card or whatever, but you could rack up a credit card doing whatever sort of irresponsible type stuff. So I think the fact that you actually have to have the money to place the bet is in a weird way, makes gambling a little bit more safer. And the people that really have compulsion issues and have serious problems, they get into trouble when they owe someone $12,000 that's taking their action. So I think if it gets legalized, they'll be, I don't know, I think people will be more inclined to just do it legally.
Well, the recourse then, so if you go, I guess, in the hole, like $30,000, whatever the case is, and you bet way too much, you could just file for bankruptcy. And you don't have to deal with somebody breaking your fucking, your shins or your knees or whatever the case is.
No one's going to murder you from DraftKings. FanDuel isn't going to break your knees. Eventually, if you're really that crazy of a gambler, you'll max out your credit card, right? And I think what they could do, another way, if they're really worried about it, I don't, again, I'm pro sports gambling, so I don't think it's an issue, but the same way they do in the state of California, you can't buy lottery tickets with a credit card. You can buy it with a debit card. So again, but
that pulses straight out of your bank account, so there's actual money that you have to,
So maybe that's the way they do it, where you can do it on an app, but you can only deposit money with a debit card. That would seem like a good way to keep things a little safe. Like you physically have to have the money.
Now, I saw something the other night, and it made me think of, okay, well, if we go the full digital route, something I hadn't thought of until I read this, or I saw someone tweet about it, and they posted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They had placed a halftime over bet on some NBA game, and it went to OT.
Yeah.
And DraftKings came in and said, well, OT doesn't count to the over. And they're like, since when does that not count towards the over? And they're like, well, if you read our rules, but they could change those rules if you're not paying attention. And suddenly it's just like, well, you had to read the fine print on whatever.
Yeah, if you're doing any sort of, where you really run into trouble, I've seen a lot is parlays, right? So some sports books, like let's say you hit you bet a 5-team parlay, and if someone doesn't know
explain to the listeners out there what a parlay is and everything else.
If you're new to parlays or sports gambling, a 5-team parlay would mean 5 separate things would have to happen.
Yeah, you're rolling over.
Right. So all 5 of these games have to hit the way you say, and then you're growing your odds exponentially, right? So instead of just 5 individual bets, let's say you win 3, you lose 2, hey, you're up $100 if you're betting $100. Yeah. If you tie them all together and say all 5 of these things hit and they do, then you win a ton of money. If just one of them's wrong, then
you lose
the whole thing's lost, right? And so what'll happen is in gambling there's a push. If let's say I say the Sixers are going to beat the Lakers by 6 points. Wouldn't happen right now because
you should have picked any of the 12 to 15 other teams. Hold on. First off, first question: are the Sixers at home?
Yeah, well, that's huge and maybe they would be -6 if they are at home. So let's say the Sixers win by 6, right? And they win exactly by 6 points. That means it's a push, right? Nobody wins, nobody loses.
Correct.
You would just get your money back. Now, if you do a parlay, some sports books, like let's say you do a 5-team parlay, 4 of your bets hit and one is a push. Some books count that as a loss. Other sports books will grade that as a 4-team parlay win. So you really have to
pay attention to who does.
Look at the rules because the prices will be different. Every sports book grades stuff differently. So I know it's boring to read the terms and conditions, but
if you're putting money on this, you really should take the extra 5 minutes so you understand what you're putting your money on.
Right. Do yourself a favor and actually read the stuff. I had never heard the same thing. I saw that same tweet. I'd never heard that.
Me either. I just assumed when you're betting the over, overtime counts because that's the over of the second half.
Yeah. If you bet a game over, overtime always counts towards that.
Exactly.
Now, I had never heard the second half exemption thing that DraftKings is trying to play. And again, that's crazy. So there's always going to be a little bit of bookkeeping issues, and especially when they come up with the crazier exotic bets. So always be careful if you're betting like the national anthem or the Gatorade color,
Super Bowl.
And that's why it's like you don't want to get in an argument with a guy about what constitutes the color purple, on the Gatorade thing. So you got to be careful with some of these.
So you have those for Super Bowl for NFL. Does the NBA have any kind of prop bet like that? Come playoff time or in the finals, like how quickly will LeBron throw the chalk up into the air in Game X?
Yeah, they'll do a little bit of that for the NBA Finals, but NBA playoff time there'll be a ton of all different sorts of player props, meaning like propositions on specific players for specific outcomes. Like you can bet, LeBron James rebounds in the first quarter, like all sorts of nuanced bets when it comes to every sort of stat, rebounds, passing. They're way more stat heavy in that sense.
I will toot my own horn. So I didn't make any of these bets, but a buddy of mine went to Vegas 3 separate times over the NBA playoffs last year. And he doesn't know anything about it. He just likes to gamble.
Yeah.
So he texts me the sheet and be like, hey, pick as many as you want. I went like 82%.
Oh, my God.
Well, it's when you give me 30 bets and just like, okay, well, the over-under on Draymond getting points, rebounds, and assists tonight is X. And then you go through and they've got all that for and be like, okay, well, that one's a guaranteed. Oh, Clay's kind of hobbled tonight. So I would take the under on this, whatever else. I did well, but none of it was my own money. So the stakes are
I always feel like
money.
I do better on the podcast because we pick tons of games. Every NFL game against the spread. We do tons of college basketball, NBA stuff. And then the stuff that I don't actually place the bet on, those are the ones almost all the time I hit on the podcast. So if I actually...
Do you let people know that? Guys, I didn't put any money on this one. So this one might pay.
That's probably pretty good. Yeah, I definitely get in that space where if I'm giving people advice on gambling, I do much better than when I'm actually... And that's the other thing where you get into on the podcast. I'll say, like, whatever you do, don't do this. And then like, when I'm actually putting the bet in, I'm like, maybe I'll give that a shot. So I go against my own logical advice sometimes.
At the start of the NBA playoffs, can you make a bet on who you think finals MVP will be? On, game one, and just like you're projecting. Because I know you can pick who you think will make the finals or who will win the overall championship. But can you start saying, I think he'll be, MVP or anything, points leader for the playoffs, rebounds leader.
Yeah, I don't know. They keep offering more and more. I mean, especially now that a bunch of states are legalized, because they can come, they bring in, they just end up offering way more bets. There's a place called Points Bet. They offer a ton of like crazy stuff like that, or more like more exotic, I guess would be the way to describe it. And I'm pretty sure you can get down on stuff like that. And it's interesting too when you're talking about MVP, because it's a lot of times it's kind of it's a way to get a better price on the series itself. So
as you're saying, coupling the two bets.
Yeah, or like let's say the Lakers get to the finals. Most likely, if they win, LeBron James will be the MVP of the finals, right? So pretty safe correlation there. So a lot of times you're better off betting LeBron James MVP than just betting on the Lakers to win the finals. Same thing with like the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Patrick Mahomes to win MVP, that was 2-1, whereas the Chiefs just to win the Super Bowl was like closer to, even money. So you got a lot better odds betting Patrick Mahomes, and, pretty good chance that if they win, he's going to be the MVP.
Well, you have to have just an absolutely stellar stand-up performance from someone else.
Yeah, and especially in the NFL, they kind of just default to the quarterback anyway if it's close.
Yeah. And in Mahomes' case, I don't think anybody outshone him. It wasn't like he was head and shoulders above. Yeah. But if you look at the team, like, we wouldn't be here without him.
Right. And,
so might as well give it to him.
He didn't, in a weird way, he didn't have a great game. Like
he had a good game.
Yeah, especially for Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he came up late, made some big throws when it mattered. You could make a good case for other people to win the MVP, but really it's just like, gun to their head, people just check the quarterback.
Well, and what was it? Damian Williams, I think you might have made a case for.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it's like, I don't know. It's crapshoot. So if that's the case, you might as well go with
and every once in a while you'll get the like wonky Andre Iguodala type thing. But
yeah, because he slowed LeBron down.
Yeah, exactly. You going into it, you have a pretty good idea of like, okay, if X team is going to win, this is probably who the series final MVP is going to be. So sometimes there is better value in taking just the MVP than the team.
Now, one bet that I actually have been monitoring is the Zion for Rookie of the Year, because if he plays every game by the time he gets to the end of the season, he'll be at 37 games.
37
right?
games.
37 games. The least amount that's ever been awarded that's played, games played, it's either 50 or 55 games. So he'd be well shy of the threshold previously in all the years they've been giving out Rookie of the Year.
What was it, Patrick Ewing, I think? Or
Ewing is in the top 3 for fewest games played.
Yeah.
Somewhere between the 50-55 range. But his odds 2 weeks ago was 15-1.
Yep.
Then a week ago it was 400-1. Now it's 210. It's plus 210.
Yeah.
It wasn't 401. Sorry, it was plus 400. Now it's plus 210. Ja Morant is still negative 250. That hasn't wavered, but he is slowly creeping into this argument. So at what point is, because it seems like it would have been a great value bet at 15-1.
Oh, yeah.
400-1, still good.
Yeah, I think if you were going to try and bet Zion to win Rookie of the Year, that value has gone.
Yeah.
And actually, I think there's probably some value now at Ja Morant at minus 250, meaning you bet $250 and you get $100, $100 back. The case for Ja Morant is the guy's been awesome and he's played the entire season.
Exactly.
You hear all the media members, there's a lot of people coming out saying like Zion's great, he hasn't played enough games, What you can do, I think really for Zion to win it, the Pelicans also have
to make the playoffs.
They have to get into the playoffs. So I think what you could do is you could probably bet Ja Morant at minus 250 to win Rookie of the Year, and then also kind of protect yourself a little bit and also put some money on, Pelicans to make the playoffs. Because then there's a chance you could win both those. Like there's a chance Pelicans get in and still people say, nah, he got in, that's impressive, but it's still not enough. So there's a chance you could win both. If they do get in and he does win, then you're kind of splitting your bet. But at least, there's a chance you win both, and I don't think you would lose both, right? Because if the Pelicans get in, I don't know. That's kind of my logic there.
Yeah.
I think the move right now is to bet Pelicans to make the playoffs and bet Ja Morant Rookie of the Year.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I think Ja's, it's coming close to securing it, but at the same time, Zion is rattling off stats that
when he's putting up 40-point games.
Well, I mean, he did most consecutive, like he had 4 straight games of shooting 55% or better, and then in his 5th, had he done 5th, I think he would have been the only player ever to do this. And he ended up shooting, 46%, which is still excellent.
Yes.
Still, from the field, that is still excellent, but it fell shy. But he's had other, like he's now in a statistical category to just him and Jordan, and I can't remember specifically what it was, because there's been so many interesting little, I think he's got the most points now for a teenager in X number of games.
Yeah, it's like under 20 to score 20 points. For the funniest thing to me is that first Zion game where he randomly hit a bunch of threes.
Oh, yeah, it was great to watch.
And everyone was like, is he a three-point shooter? Oh, and then, of course, no. He's just this big dude you can't guard who's also insanely athletic. I mean, the ups that guy has for a person who's probably 300 pounds, if not pretty close, is insane. It's so fun to watch.
It's the second jump. So
Yeah.
it's the jump, missing a layup, and then goes up and battles, gets the rebound, and goes up for the second layup and gets fouled on that every single time. And there's what do you do? How do you stop a 290-pound man?
It's so easy to compare him to LeBron, but watching him play against other people, it's hard not to remember that feeling I had when I first watched LeBron in the league, and you go, this is like a different thing. It's a different format of human.
He's unique. He's basically like Barkley's size with LeBron's athleticism.
Yeah.
Just this big, huge dude who's somehow insanely
taller
agile.
than Barkley, too.
Yeah. He's agile. He's quick. He just has all these attributes for a man his size should not be physically possible. No. And then once he develops an outside shot, it's like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Or he starts hitting free throws. Like, look out.
Oh, no, I think that's what, I mean, by and large, he's a pretty good free throw shooter.
Yeah.
Especially for a guy his size. And considering he's just been living in the paint.
Gets a little dialed in. I mean, yeah, he's just fun. It's really, that's what it is.
All right. So standard bets within the league, so MVP is done.
Feels like Giannis walking away with it.
That to me is you're wasting your money because the return on that is going to be so little unless you really want to make, $1.50 on your $100 bet.
Yeah.
You're not going to get much. Whereas I think Coach of the Year is still kind of up for debate. Nick Nurse is leading right now, but you could make a case for a couple other different individuals.
Yeah, I mean it's again it's a pretty wide open race. I would still stick with the favorite there. It's tough, and Nick Nurse, he didn't win it last year, right? So it does seem like
no. I think Budenholzer won it last year.
Yeah, you always got to factor in the kind of storyline aspect, and I think the storyline for the Raptors is very clear. Like, Kawhi left us, but we're still a championship team, and Nick Nurse is, I mean, they're a scrappy bunch. So I think Nick Nurse, Coach of the Year, is probably where it's headed.
I have to look up, see what the odds are on that right now, but it's still, I think that one's a closer race. 6 man of the year. There's 3 guys in this real hunt. So it's kind of you could waste your money there. At least Coach of the Year's a little more wide open. Rookie of the Year, the closing gap. MVP is done. Defensive Player of the Year, I think Anthony Davis is technically leading right now, but that one's still up for somewhat debate.
Yeah, up for grabs, but we'll see. I mean, it does feel like as these next couple months happen, like a narrative kind of shapes around the different awards.
Yeah.
So. I don't see a ton of value in any of these like season-long stuff. I mean, if you would have taken Giannis at the beginning of the season, ssure, but yeah.
I'm sure we'd have gotten good odds because to repeat back-to-back MVP is very difficult to do.
Very rare. I wouldn't have picked it.
No.
Certainly. I'm blanking on what I actually had. I probably maybe took a shot at Kawhi, who's played very well, but he hasn't, the load management thing and
exactly.
Yeah. And the Bucks this is such a weird year where the Bucks are historically good. Like I think their points per win that they're beating people by. The point differential is historic.
It's at 12 points. I can't, but right now that would be all-time best.
Yeah, and no one's talking enough about it. I think people are kind of looking past the fact that oh, hey, they didn't make a run last year. And so they're not really...
This team isn't so different from last year, and they fell apart when it mattered most, and they didn't even make, the finals.
So they're not getting credit for this kind of incredible regular season.
But Chris Middleton has made the leap. I assumed the loss of Brogdon would hurt them more, and somehow they have managed to look even better. Connaughton and DiVincenzo have been solid pieces for them. Yeah. I think the biggest question mark
I love
Eric
DiVincenzo.
Bledsoe. So do I.
Villanova guy. I'm from the Philly area, so it's always fun to see dudes like that. Because, you have no idea whether or not he could do it at the next level, and it's really cool to see him kind of succeeding.
Yeah, I don't watch college anymore because it's just too frustrating. It's one guy. It's like when I watched one game of Ja Morant's last year, the first game in the tournament. Yeah. I was like, this dude is clearly ready for the NBA. And the reason his team is losing is because his teammates aren't as good as him. Like, he'll make a pass because he assumes they're going to continue on this trajectory and land in this spot. So he puts the pass bullet perfect where they need to be, and they're not grabbing it as often, and they're not getting to their spot when they should be. And it's not on him. It's just like, dude, he is so much better than you.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have people that I know that side with you that are like, the NBA is better. They're so much more athletic. It's such a cleaner product.
It is.
It's so much more fun to watch.
So much better to watch.
And then I also have people in my life that are like, college is the way. These guys, they don't get paid. Well, actually, they do get paid, but
they do. But they play for the heart, the love of the game,
and they call traveling. Yes. I never understood like why traveling is such a boring call at watching as a fan. I don't understand why people get upset when they let it go in the NBA. It's a flow thing. Like, let the game flow.
The only time traveling bothers me is the step back.
Yeah.
Now, there are occasional times when the step back, that's a legitimate, I don't think he traveled. But the way the rules have been cooked now, it's a travel almost every time to me, and it drives me nuts. Whereas, like, on the drive, like, people get upset with Giannis. Yeah, for the Euro step and be like, look at all the steps, and be like, well, technically that's a gather, and it's... If you go back, you can find clips from the 40s, 50s, 60s of guys doing the exact same move. It's just, that's a gather step. They just
weren't dugging.
Yeah. It's just now they're so much more athletic. They know the rules. They know how to get, basically they've studied the game and the nuance of it. But yeah, the college game is just, it's too frustrating at times, When I have to cheer every time a dude is like, oh, he gets charges. That's his best skill. You're like, no.
Yeah, college basketball is a great example of sports gambling where if I wasn't allowed to bet on college basketball, I don't know if I would watch college basketball. Like, I get sucked. I would probably still watch pro basketball if I couldn't bet on it. But watching college basketball, every March Madness, me and the guy I do the podcast with, Ryan Kramer, we go out to Las Vegas. Okay. Those first 2 days.
You'll probably see my brother-in-law. He does the same thing.
Tell him to hit us up. The first 2 days of March Madness in Las Vegas, there's nothing like it as a gambler because Thursday there's 16 games, Friday there's 16 games. It's just back to back to back to back. You're just hanging out in these sports book. To watch a game with other gamblers, it's hilarious because it's very clear they're not cheering for one particular team. Or a lot of times they're just like clearly cheering for the over or the under, and the place will go nuts where it's seemingly meaningless. But like a guy hits a late three to cover the spread, and everyone goes crazy. And so there's a fun camaraderie aspect to it. But yeah, I kind of get what you're saying as far as the product, but I still kind of get sucked in March Madness, the tournament, the bracket, filling it out.
The tournament I will watch, and I haven't watched any games leading up to it just because, especially on that initial Thursday and Friday, there's just so much basketball. Yeah. Even if you don't care about this, it's like it's almost like red zone. Hey, we'll cut to this game, and it's just like the final 5 minutes, and it's a close game, and then boom, it ends, and we'll go over to this one. It's got, two guys that should be in the league next year. Okay, that's great. I just continue to watch.
There's always a couple guys that, are going to be big stars coming up that are fun to watch, and it's changed a bit, but it's still college basketball. The gambling aspect is so huge.
Although they're saying this year that the draft is super weak.
Yeah, well, and then there was a couple guys that were, got injured or kind of basically sat out once it was clear they were going to be big-time picks. So, yeah, it's not you're not going to see a Ja Morant, but maybe there's always one or two guys that emerge from the tournament that are kind of forged in their tournament performance and that really, like, come out of nowhere and rise draft stock. It'll be interesting to see who ends up coming out.
All right, let's move on. That was a nice half hour of sports gambling, which is never. It doesn't really happen on the show all that often. We've done one variation where the other guy that I know likes gambling came in and was just like, all right, you got to choose. Here's take the over-under and just went through all these for the finals.
Oh, nice.
He's supposed to get, X for the total finals. What do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think they'll shoot above this in three-point percentage? And just going through, and then you measure at the end how close you were. That's fun.
Yeah.
But no money was, traded hands on any of this. So it's good. But maybe, come playoff times, we'll have it back and we can talk actual
definitely,
bets.
Man.
And
once the lines are out, then I start itching and just hop in. Yeah, and it's crazy with all, like, the player prop stuff. That's where, like, the deep analytic guys come in. And, the basketball analysis. Basketball really, Houston, the Rockets, they've been, huge as far as, like, data and, Daryl Morey.
Oh, yeah.
Just, like, going all in
forefront.
on it. Yeah, so it's interesting. And just looking at the shot charts and everything, you can go really deep in the NBA data.
Oh, I don't even have access to all the stats that I would love to have access to.
No, I know. It's like the teams, it's like they put out some stuff, but then some stuff they keep secret.
Oh, yeah.
Like this
well, they have their
data.
in-house, and then there's like the overall NBA tracking system that we don't have access to, but, writers and the team's general information pool, they all have access to the Sport VU stuff, which I would love to get because sometimes you hear someone drop a stat and be like, pick and roll curl from the elbow. DeMar DeRozan shoots actually 57.3% in the fourth quarter when you're like, holy shit. Like,
where are you pulling this from?
Yeah, I don't have access to those numbers. But the amount of data that is out there, even for a casual fan, is really impressive. You just want to go to like Basketball Reference as a point.
Yeah, it's so cool to just have. You're looking up like rebounding stats from like 1968 or what. It really is such a great resource, the internet in general.
Yeah, you can look up, 5-man lineups, what happens when they take out, subtract one person, they plug in.
Yeah,
X,
the plus minus.
Yeah, to see all the differences and the amount of data that's out there.
Just real quick side thing, the plus minus. One of the NBA writers we have on our site, sportsgamblingpodcast.com, he was pointing out that a fun bet that he's been doing, because, live gambling is such a thing, that the plus minus, what he does is he waits for LeBron to sub, and LeBron's sub pattern.
Oh, then what, bets the minus?
Yeah. So it's like, it's very, LeBron, his schedule as far as like when they sub him in and out has become very obvious. So he'll like look at the live bets and then see like, okay, he's not going to start the second quarter or whatever it is, and then get in there on the live betting, and that's just next level, and I love it.
I watched a video on YouTube, I don't know, it was probably a couple months ago, where a professional bettor in the UK, it's got him and he's got a partner, and the partner goes to tennis tournaments and will sit as close as he can, and he's got an earpiece in, and they're on the phone the whole time, so he is live betting whether or not that's a point, an ace, whatever the case is, and so long as they can be a split second quicker than this system can update, they can rack up and they can make thousands off just one match, and then they move on to the next one. You're like, oh my God, that's some next level where you're flying around the world, because I think the dude was in South Africa or something, or just another complete continent just to do this.
Yeah, just to get 1 second ahead. Yeah. And you're good.
Yeah, it's a fractional amount, but it makes a difference so long as you can, dial in that.
Well, yeah, and normally, depending on the sports book, a lot of times they have people there. Like I know DraftKings has people at these games, like keeping an eye on it and updating their live stuff physically there, so they can kind of prevent against that. But if you find like some tennis tournament you can't cover every sport. Yeah, exactly. There's gonna be some little gaps. Trust me, I've heard every sort of beating the system, or we get emails all the time of like, I figured it out, or they have inside information. I can't tell you how many emails I get with inside information, and like 30% of the time they're right, but a lot are wrong. Notoriously the one.
Of course. I know the horse. This is the one that's going to trust me. I got a guy at the track. Okay.
An all-timer for me was it was the year the Patriots ended up beating the Falcons, the 28-3 Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I had gotten, quote-unquote, inside information about, of all things, the Puppy Bowl. And this guy emailed in saying the Puppy Bowl had already happened. Team Rough is going to defeat Team Fluff. I know it. I've seen the tape. You're good. Just bet it. And of course, like some of these online sites will take bets on the Puppy Bowl.
Of course.
I go all in on Team Rough. And then, of course, the guy had no idea what he was talking about. Team Fluff dominates. I lose a ton of money. But I come all the way back because I bet big on the Patriots, and I did a prop bet that the Patriots would win by exactly between 4 and 7 points.
Okay.
So they got into overtime, and then they scored the touchdown in overtime to win by exactly 6. So it bailed me out of my Puppy Bowl bets. It was a crazy ride. But yeah, that's kind of the world I live in.
It's got to be a finite number of times that sentence has been said. But I got bailed out of my Puppy Bowl bet.
Yeah, I would not recommend betting the Puppy Bowl. The refs don't call anything. They let the puppies do whatever they want.
Son of a bitch. Come on, ref. Yeah. What are you looking at? Man, the fact that you and others actually bet on that is
big market.
Yeah, big market or degenerates.
Yes,
either or. It could be a confluence of the two. All right, so let's move on. So another one I sent you was basically a little segment like who you got. And if you look at, the ones in each conference, Lakers and Milwaukee, everybody assumes they're at least going to be in their conference finals.
Hard not to see that.
It is. But then after that, to me, the Clippers, everybody else assumes they'll make the conference finals. So let's take them out of the discussion equation. But let's go number 2 versus number 2. So you've got Toronto or Denver. Who do you think amongst those two teams has a better shot of actually pushing to their conference finals or potentially the finals?
I mean, not to take anything away from Denver, and I always like taking that the team who gets that high elevation. That's another one that
makes a difference.
On back-to-backs, a team coming in back-to-back to play in Denver on a back-to-back the second night, or Utah.
Utah, I was about to say,
Utah secretly.
That's the sneaky one.
It is high elevation, and it's not factored into the line enough. But of those two teams, I would definitely go Toronto.
Yeah.
I love the kind of I love Spicy P. I love it just feels like a real team, and I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of make a run and surprise people in the East. They have playoff experience. They have championship experience.
They do now, yeah. The bulk of that team.
Certainly, Kawhi played really well, but I think they've done a good job of replacing Kawhi, not by bringing in a number one huge star, but just by the couple guys they have just playing better as a team. They're very well coached, and especially if they get a 3 seed, get a bunch of home games. Like I think, or no, they're the 2 seed right now. Yeah, so I think they have a decent path
with Boston. So they were neck and neck. I think it was a half game difference before last night with Boston, and now they're a game and a half up on Boston.
Yeah.
My only question with them is because their defense is solid as can be, and I love the stuff that Nick Nurse does. It's just out of nowhere for the next 3 minutes, we're running a zone. Yeah. We're going to run a box and one, and the offense then gets confused, and as soon as they start to figure it out, boom, we switch back to man. Or, hey, we're going to press right now for no other reason than just get them out of rhythm. And then they switch back. It's one of my favorite little wrinkles that Nurse does. His defensive schemes and their length. Like you get out of nowhere, like the Boucher kid, who a block machine has got these super long arms, but then you add that with Spicy P and you add it with the other length that they have. It makes them tough to go up against. My question with them is who's going to get me a bucket late?
Yeah,
what the finals come down, or not the finals, but the playoffs come down to who can get me a bucket.
Yeah, who's going to get that crazy, insane quadruple bounce off the rim to go in and crush the Sixers? Who's going to be that guy?
Had that ball not gone in, it goes to overtime. You guys win. Hands down. I have all faith in that.
And it gets, I feel like it's not talked enough, and I really wanted them to keep Jimmy Butler. I love the intensity he brought to this team. That's kind of my biggest critique of the Sixers.
And he gets you a bucket.
He was the guy that pulled down that rebound, got it down to the court, got the layup that tied it to set up essentially the Kawhi shot. But
miracle shot.
He was the guy that was like willed the team to set up what would hope to be an overtime.
But they had shifted the entire offense to Jimmy is now going to run the point. We're going to shift Simmons to the dunker spot and just take the ball out of his hands because we need a playmaker. And that's what the irony when it came down to trade deadline time. And Elton Brand was like, we need to sign a playmaker. We need to go out and get a playmaker. And be like, well, he had one. But instead, you opted to extend Tobias Harris to max him. and let Jimmy. There was friction, obviously, with Jimmy. We'll never know the full story on that.
But I loved him just because I think Brett Brown is too easy on Embiid and Simmons. Like, that's my biggest critique. I don't think he pushes them hard enough. I mean, he's at press conferences just being like, Ben, could you take a three? He needs to draw a harder line on these guys, and I think Jimmy was the veteran that really did that. Horford came in, and he was maybe supposed to have that like older veteran role, and he's just been like nothing. No, he's just not like no gel. And again, at some point, to me, it's got to fall on Brett Brown. It's like, dude, you have so much talent, you have to figure out how to. Well, work.
If they flame out in the playoffs, and the fact that on the road they are abysmal,
they have to get to the Eastern Conference, or Brett Brown's not coming back.
Yeah,
in my mind,
he's done.
Yeah.
He is flat out done unless they make a hell of a push and they, if they manage to at the 6th seed.
The problem is they're gonna have to play so many road games, and they're horrible on the road.
Yeah, let's see, what are they? 2, 7, 3, 6. So they would have to take out either Toronto or Boston as it's currently constructed to make the finals.
Yeah,
and if they manage to do that, maybe.
Well, and I'll make a case for the Sixers, and I think the case is, hey, they don't lose home games. Okay, so check those off. Not going to lose any home games.
But they're 6th seed, so they're going to be on the road more often than not.
But yeah, they just have to win one, just steal one. That's the case, and maybe they kind of gel. But the injury, the Simmons back thing, now it's like, Jesus Christ, this team
back is not good. But the problem with Denver is we haven't seen Denver do it yet.
Yeah.
So it's tough to...
The West is just, it's insane.
It's a juggernaut.
I think there's just veteran teams. I mean, Houston, Clippers, Lakers. Like, I put them all...
They'd have to knock off the Clippers to make it there.
Yeah.
And I just don't see that happening.
I don't see it either. I mean, I like this Denver team. I like the way they're building the team. I like Joker. He's fun. Like, I like their team. I just don't see it translating to playoff ball.
Now, them being second, I do a preseason, prediction, whatever, for where I think everybody's going to end up. And I had Denver at number 1 in the West because I figured they have all the youth and they want to prove to everybody that we are legitimate. So the fact that they're in second place does not shock me in the slightest.
No.
But will that translate in the playoffs is what everybody is asking right now. So of those two teams, I think Toronto has a better shot.
Yeah, because just the experience, basically, and the fact that they've done it before, they know the path, and I like Nick Nurse a lot as a coach.
All right, moving on then. We'll go 4 versus 4. Who has the better shot to make their conference finals between Miami and Houston? And it's 2 tough questions.
Again, that's a great question because Miami, Jimmy Butler, what they're doing down there.
Iggy hasn't done shit for them thus far.
Yeah.
Their big acquisition. Now, had they gotten Gallinari as well, okay, but Iguodala has not been good for them so far.
And they have the ultimate home court advantage being in Miami because players can't help themselves and go out in Miami.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed if you're a Miami Heat fan.
Yeah. So, I mean, Miami, to win the East, you could make a case, right? But I would definitely go Houston. This version of super small ball that they're playing, I could see it kind of being tough for teams to figure out, and there just isn't enough tape on it. And you have a bunch of good players on there, and maybe the speed, the pace. Of those 2 teams, I'm taking Houston.
Well, because by pulling Capella out, they do this 5 and out, so where they have 4 shooters, and then Harden or Westbrook, if you want to drive, the lane is wide open. Yeah. And then if the defense collapses on you, kick out, whatever the case is. Their defensive numbers are the exact same since Capella left. They have not missed a beat. Covington has been great for them. Look, you're going to be playing 6'5" PJ Tucker at the center position, and he's going to have to go through some variation of Rudy Gobert, Jokic, AD, or JaVale McGee, whichever of the two.
And a good argument against it is the fact that the style of play is so different in the playoffs, right? It's slowed down, more physical, whatever. But I guess I would just say the fact that what they're doing right now is a little bit unknown, and the fact that they could just kind of say screw it and just try and outscore teams and not really waste a lot of energy on defense and just see what happens. I think that to me is a more interesting way in to win the West than Miami's path in the East.
Because of the three-point shooting, they have such a high variance that they could easily get 4 games where they shoot above 40% as a team, and then suddenly it's like you can't beat the Rockets.
Yeah.
So it's possible. It is possible. Of those two, I think the East is a little bit easier because
that's true. I mean, I guess I'll stick with my Houston angle, but I think if you're making a case for Miami, it's the path is probably easier.
It is just because, look, you're right now. Somebody gets to play the Nets, which is Milwaukee. Yeah. Somebody gets to play Orlando, which is Toronto. Somebody gets to play Indy, which slowly figuring it out since they got Oladipo back. But Philly is sitting at 6. And, okay, at home they're tough, but that's fine. You're going to have home court. So it's not as difficult. Whereas you look at the West, you've got 4 teams vying to get in to that 8 spot. And then 7 above, it's just like, I don't want to face any of those teams.
And another angle against Houston, although I'm working against my own argument, but Harden in the playoffs, he
tends to fade.
He kind of hasn't done it.
Yeah.
I was at one of the Clippers games where they just completely blew that game, and Harden is there sitting on the bench, not a part of this crazy comeback.
Oh, yeah. When in the playoffs, when Clippers are up huge, they sit Harden, and suddenly the Rockets come climbing back and win the game.
Yeah.
It looked like it was over, flat out over.
So weird.
Yeah.
The Rockets team is just tough to figure out, and I would say that's probably their greatest asset. And if they're and you're probably seeing the best version of
Westbrook for sure.
Westbrook, right?
But will that maintain in the playoffs, or will he go back to I need to shoot threes and be like, Russ, please don't?
I was hearing on someone's podcast that they did all this analytics. They showed him the shot chart and like his percentages from different spot, and they're like, okay, but stop shooting these and then shoot these, and he's like, I thought I was going to make those.
Exactly.
Like,
shoot or shoot.
Yeah,
he's always been of that mentality, but since he's dialed it back to just 2 attempts per game, the rest of his efficiency has gone through the roof.
They seem to have gotten to a good place with him on the team.
Yeah.
So we'll
hopefully
see.
He maintains.
That's my argument for them.
I'd like to see Russ, make a hell of a push and win a championship. I've always been a Russ fan.
Oh my God, I was so what were they up 3-1 OKC against Golden State, and man, I had OKC plus 350, decent chunk of change on them plus 350 winning that series, and I'm thinking to myself, should I hedge out? I'm like, no, they're up 3-1. Don't hedge out.
Yeah, 3-1 is usually just the final nail in the coffin. It's like, this is over.
Yeah.
Statistically, this is over.
But I was on the other side of that when the Cavs were down 3-1. I had them to win it all, when Kyrie hit that shot in Game 7. So I was on the opposite end of the other 3-1. So, yeah, you just keep gambling. It all evens out. That's my philosophy.
What was it? The year before that where the Warriors won, I text my brother-in-law who likes to gamble, and I was like, hey, what's the biggest bet you can make? Because I had just happened to look, and the Warriors, the Cavs were wildly favored for the next game, and just looking at this going, there's no way the Cavs are winning this game.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's the max you can put down? He's like, well, what are you talking about? It was like minimum 5, but I think 10K. I'm pretty sure. Like, I know the outcome of this. And he's like, well, then we need to leave to go to Vegas right now because I can't do that on any of my online books.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't go to Vegas. That's why I'm texting you.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought you had a hookup with somebody because you've been gambling your entire life. And he's like, nah, we got to go to Vegas. And, of course, I would have won. Every once again, I will make I know for certain that is going to happen. Yeah, but I bet so rarely.
Text me next time.
Not a problem. Hey, look, it comes up in the playoffs every once again where I'm just like, there's no way. Look, there's just no way this is happening.
And really when it comes to betting the NBA, I do like to wait to the playoffs to really get going. I'll throw some stuff on, like some primetime games, some big games. I'll do a little here or there. But really I like to save like my bigger bets for the playoffs because it's, I don't know, it's weirdly a little easier to predict. Effort all around is maxed out, which you don't sometimes
during
get
the
in
regular
season. And there's so much weird situational stuff that goes through 82 games. In the playoffs, you know who their lineup is, you know who their rotation is, you know they're going to be maxed out on effort, you know the back-to-backs. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's just a little easier to figure out.
It is. There's too much data in the regular season.
Too many variables. Yeah.
Yeah. When it comes down to the playoffs, it's just like, okay, well, in these matchups, you're going to see these matchups for minimum 4 games, maybe 7.
Yeah, and let's say it's your game 3. You've already have 2 back-to-back games where you saw how they play each other, how they match up, who's guarding who. I don't know. To me, it's easier to predict, especially when you're betting like player props and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I like to go much bigger in the playoffs.
All right, moving on to another one, which is 2 big question marks: number 5 Indy or number 5 Utah. Of the 2, who do you think?
Really, neither team has a chance. But I'll make the case for God. I was gonna go Utah, but then in my head, I'm like. Indy, you know what? I'll say Indy because maybe the Oladipo thing really gets going.
Yeah, they finally click.
No way a 5 seed is doing anything in the West just because how stacked it is.
Of the 2, I have more faith in Utah.
That's true. It's
because look, you got Mitchell, who's got playoff experience. In that,
certainly a much better team, better put together.
Bogdanovich is a great addition. Mike Conley's occasionally thrown in some good games lately. I mean, his season's not been good by Mike Conley standards.
And they've kind of done they're almost like the Western Conference Toronto, where they lost Hayward, and it's crushing. You're going to lose.
It should bottom out.
Yeah, but they've kind of leaned in the other way and really figured out how to gel like a more constructive team.
They also did really well drafting Donovan Mitchell, I believe, the 13 pick.
Yeah.
So you lucked out quite well there.
Well, and then I'm a huge Sixers fan, but I was always against tanking and trusting the process.
Oh, really? I love, as soon as basically you guys were just upfront and honest about it, I was on board as a casual fan. It's like, this makes all the sense in the world. Good for you, Hinkie and the Sixers.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we've cursed ourselves as a guy who believes in like sports mojo. I think all these injuries, everything that's going wrong, I think we were cursed by the process. And then you just...
I think, honestly, you're cursed by not trusting the process fully and taking Hinkie out.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's where the curse came in.
You gave up too much to move up to get Fultz, and then got rid of that asset, and now you've been, you traded away Covington because
we have to bring up Fultz. No,
Brand was in the mix to go get Covington again. It was the effing irony of this.
It's one thing to miss on a guy, but then to go up and miss on the guy, and then you see Jason Tatum becoming like this superstar. You want to throw yourself in front of a bus. It's but maybe you're right. Maybe that's what it was.
Because Hinkie never would have traded up to get Fultz. Never.
No, he wouldn't have. You're right.
He would have traded down. That's the only way he's willing to go. So you would have been in line to get Tatum or anybody else, but you then would still have the assets.
Yeah, I still think I don't know. We're Philadelphia. We're rocky. We're the underdogs. We're scrappy. Like just intentionally sending out a team there every night with no intention of winning is just it's anti-Philadelphia, the spirit, and I think that's what's threw things off.
All right. Well,
we were huge underdogs against the British. We didn't say like, oh, hey,
let's go back to the Revolutionary War.
We're gonna phone it in. A bunch of they were the founding fathers. They said, hey, we're heavily outmatched. We're just not gonna blow it up and call it a rebuilding country. We're gonna scrap and fight.
Guys, 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. That's who we are.
Bit of a stretch, but
all right. The final of who you got is at number 6. Your Philadelphia 76ers or the Oklahoma City Thunder?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is just, I'm going to go Sixers, even though I just made a whole case about how they're cursed. And, I mean, a lot of this is knock on wood. Simmons gets back, gets healthy. There was a little bit of mojo going at some point where they were gelling. Maybe we find that again.
Yeah. Shake Milton looks good.
Shake Milton. 39 points.
Cork Maz. I like Cork Maz.
They got some players, man.
They do. The depth is an issue. But it's that away stat, man. When you look at their home and away record.
Well, and that's why I think Brett Brown has to go. But I'm gonna pick them anyway. Because 5 and a 6 seed in the West, it's just way too much. Where the East, I could explain to you a scenario where the Sixers get the East and be somewhat credible. And it involves them being Simmons getting healthy, dominating at home, hitting enough shots on the road to steal a couple road games. I can't even begin to put together a scenario where Oklahoma is actually doing damage.
Well, it comes down to, because I like the OKC team as it's constructed. It's way better than I ever thought it would be.
No, certainly.
And coming into the year, I was like, you know what? They're going to try and ship out Chris Paul, which means Steven Adams is on the chopping block, and so is Danilo Gallinari. But then you start to look at it and be like, you have so many assets. You don't want to be like the Celtics where you have all these assets, but then they don't really return anything because nobody will willing to take your assets when you want to make a move type of deal. But when it comes to playoffs, okay, now you need to go through the Clippers. And the Clippers, we need to shut Chris Paul down and their offense stops. Or, okay, maybe Shai Gilgeous goes off, and that creates the fluidity. So we have enough defenders. Okay, now we need to stop this guy too. Just like, do something, Steven Adams.
Yeah.
Do something, Gallinari.
Yeah.
Do something, Schroeder. Anybody else. Whereas Philly can give people problems.
Yeah, and what are they right now at home? Like 28-2 at home? So
yeah, something like that, 28-2, 28-3. And against everybody not named the Celtics, you guys are 9-1 of the other contenders in the East.
Yeah, so
9-1 is pretty legit.
That's a building block. That's at least something you can hang your hat on as far as making a run in the conference. You're at least good at one thing where you dominate. Where Oklahoma, I think they've exceeded expectations. They've been very competitive in the regular season. It's commendable, but really, like, they don't have anything. They don't have any like building block to kind of make a run in the conference, right? I mean, it's when you start walking through the matchups, you're just like, no, it's not going to happen.
I know. Whereas with Philly, it's you give enough people problems, and if you can figure out this. Like you said earlier in the podcast, just win one on the road, and now you've stolen
steal one.
Yeah, home court advantage, and your home court advantage seems to be, legitimate.
Yeah.
So
and maybe like the first round they have a couple of home games.
Right now they'd have Boston, and Boston is of the contenders is the only one that's got their number. I believe.
Goddamn Boston.
But I mean, pretty legitimate against other contenders. Let's see, I wrote it down. They're 7-10 overall against the other 5 teams above them.
Yeah,
which not great, but nobody's really doing well in that regard. It's the Heat that's 9-3, but they're 0-2 against the C's.
Yeah. The East does feel more wide open, but again, you have the Bucks just sitting there historically good that no one's like willing, and I'm doing the same. I'm guilty of it too. I'm not giving them probably the respect of what we're actually seeing. It doesn't feel like, or from the media's reaction, that the Bucks are having a historically good season, but they are.
Well, I think we'll believe in it when Middleton, outside of when they play the Celtics, consistently shows up.
Yeah.
So if round 1 and round 2, because as of right now they would not face the Celtics. If it's like, look, Giannis has been great, but so is Middleton, then it's a real problem. But it's hard to go against everything that you see on there. I mean, Giannis is only playing 29, 30 minutes a night because they're crushing teams so hard. It's like, hey, dude, into the third, go ahead and sit. You're done for the game.
No, it's insane.
Yeah. I mean, you already got your 32 points, 9 boards, and 7 assists, and didn't even finish the third quarter. Go ahead and take a seat. That's why he's MVP.
Yeah.
It's like when they're in the game, they're getting, they're crushing all competition, and just like, okay, now go get your rest.
Yeah, take it easy, big man.
Can he play full series of where we need you to play 45 minutes?
Yeah, and there are ways to kind of defend him where he can't get what he wants.
Yeah, Miami did it last night.
Yeah, and you saw like even in the All-Star game where they kind of like had the offense go through Embiid late. So I don't know, there's certain things that maybe a warning sign here or there, but I wouldn't if Milwaukee just cruises through the East, I'm not going to be shocked, right?
No. I mean, the reason they lost to Miami last night is because they missed their open shots.
Yeah.
But they were still getting wide open looks because even if Giannis is ineffective, defense still has to collapse.
I mean, yeah, the spacing he has just because he hits a couple threes is insane.
I know. But teams aren't respecting it just yet.
Yeah.
They still give him the buffer of like, if you want to shoot that, you go right ahead.
We're fine with you taking threes, and then he hits 1 or 2, and they're like, all right, I guess
you have to at that point.
Yeah.
It's why Simmons needs to shoot threes. It keeps the defense honest.
That's why Brett Brown needs to go, because he can't get Simmons to shoot a 3. I've been on sports teams. If a coach says do something and you don't do it, you just don't play.
Well, But how many of those teams did you have more power than the coach?
Exactly. Or make way more money than the coach? Zero.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I get it. It's the NBA. It's a power dynamic. You can't just sit Simmons for not
this isn't college. This isn't high school.
Whatever take the NBA player behind the woodshed is, and maybe it doesn't exist in the NBA because it's a very powerful league. He needs to do it and force him to, shoot a couple threes.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, let's call it right there because they got to shoot some other stuff in here. Where can people find you?
Yeah, check me out, sportsgamblingpodcast.com, putting out multiple pods a week, college basketball, NBA.
Nice.
And, yeah, sportsgamblingpodcast.com, ton of articles, videos, got it all going up there. And then, on Twitter, @GamblingPodcast, and my personal stuff, @SeanTGreen. If you're listening to this from Philly, I'm doing the Philly Comedy Club, March 14th at 9 o'clock, so come check me out there.
All right, hit him up. See him in Philly. Hit him up on all his socials or go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com and, get some information there. Maybe you guys will be out betting in the near future. That's it for Dropping Dimes this week. You can follow me anywhere at Matt Knost. Thanks so much for tuning in. Leave a comment, subscribe to whatever your feed of choice is, and I will see you guys next week for another beautiful week of NBA action. Adios.